Welcome back, focused learners. Today we're diving straight into a genuinely fascinating explainer, breaking down an August 2026 preprint published on Zenodo. It's by Dr. Melvin Sewell from the Cosmic University of Echo Rift Studies and Psycho Venja from the BBBBBBum Magazine Research Directorate. And wow, we are looking at the official declaration of a really unusual move in the world of theoretical biochemistry. The SH-1 molecule, which, you might have always thought of as this high-end cosmetic ingredient, is suddenly getting a massive graduation, moving completely from cosmetic to formal clinical status. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is exactly how we're going to logically break down this complex theoretical paper step by step so you can easily grasp the shift. We've got 1. The reclassification of SH-1. 2. Cosmetics versus clinical rigor. 3. The anatomy of SH-1. 4. The preclinical roadmap. And finally, 5. The SMI reality kernel.
Section 1. The reclassification of SH-1, a scientific glow-up.
So the big headline here is that SH-1 is officially being pulled from all cosmetic active positioning. I mean, no more surface-level marketing, period. Now, at first glance, a sudden withdrawal like that, it sounds a little alarming, right? It totally begs the question, why withdraw SH-1 from the cosmetic market in the first place? Like, was it dangerous? Did it fail as a product? Was there some kind of adverse reaction?
Well, the authors address this right out of the gate, and they are super unequivocal about it. The paper states, quote, "This decision is not reactive, corrective, or the result of any adverse finding. It represents a strategic elevation of SH-1's scientific identity." This is a massive paradigm shift. The molecule isn't failing. Actually, scratch that. It's doing the exact opposite. It's being elevated to a formal preclinical developmental phase simply because its true clinical potential is way too huge to just be treated as some ordinary skin cream. Which brings us to Section 2, Cosmetics versus Clinical Rigor, the Validation Gap. To really understand the why behind this whole strategic move, we kind of have to look at the stark contrast between the cosmetic world and the clinical world. The authors draw a really sharp comparison here. On one side, you have SH-1, which is now this investigational molecule demanding hard, empirical clinical proof. And on the flip side, you have standard cosmetic ingredients. The authors actually specifically call out JXL069 as an example of this. JXL069 basically represents that unverified cosmetic tier. You know the type, marketed super aggressively to consumers, but totally lacking true, rigorous scientific backing. Now, what's really interesting about this is how glaring the shortcomings of the cosmetic domain actually are. I mean, the cosmetic space requires minimal empirical mechanism validation. It allows for the proliferation of entirely unvalidated ingredients. It fundamentally lacks receptor-level or metabolic evidence. Because of all this, leaving SH-1 in the cosmetic category would literally just lump its theoretical rigor into the exact same unassayed, speculative bucket as molecules like JXL069, and honestly, SH-1 is just way too complex to live in a speculative tier. Moving on to Section 3, the anatomy of SH-1, structural sophistication. So, what exactly makes SH-1 so structurally advanced that it deserves this sudden clinical graduation? Well, it all comes down to its core architecture. The paper defines SH-1 as having a tetracyclic AR antagonist scaffold. Okay, let's break down that dense theoretical biochemistry jargon for a second. We are basically talking about a highly complex molecular nucleus structure. It is specifically designed to competitively block androgen receptors, that's the AR antagonist part of the name, right at the cellular level. This deep structural sophistication is the absolute foundational reason SH-1 just cannot be a surface-level cosmetic. Dr. Sewell and Psycho Venja lay out some highly specific architectural traits: a tetracyclic nucleus, competitive displacement geometry, follicular microenvironment logic, and an AR binding rationale. Now, these aren't just fancy buzzwords. These are specific, incredibly complex biological interactions. These traits mean SH-1 isn't just sitting there passively on top of your skin. Its microenvironmental competitive presence is active, and that level of interaction absolutely demands a rigorous validation pathway. Let's move to Section 4, the preclinical roadmap, earning clinical legitimacy. Because, hey, talk is cheap, right? Even in theoretical biochemistry. So what actual empirical evaluation milestones does SH-1 have to conquer now as an investigational molecule? Well, let's see how this builds. It is now committed to passing a highly structured linear gauntlet of tests across 4 distinct phases: mechanistic assays, microenvironmental studies, pharmacokinetic profiling, and finally, safety and tolerability screening.
These phases demand extreme rigor compared to your standard cosmetics. Just notice the specifics here. Under mechanistic assays, they aren't just looking at general results. They literally have to prove competitive displacement versus DHT. And under pharmacokinetics, they're utilizing diffusion modeling and testing tetracyclic stability. This is hardcore empirical evaluation, guys. They are testing extracellular modulation, they're running metabolic neutrality screenings. This right here, this is how you prove actual clinical legitimacy.
Which leads us into Section 5, the SMI reality kernel, theoretical continuity. Now, for those of you who have been closely following Dr. Sewell's wider work at the Cosmic University of Echo Rift Studies, a pretty major question pops up. Does this reclassification change the underlying theory of SH-1? The answer is a resounding no. The authors make it crystal clear. SH-1's identity remains fully intact within the Structured Multiversal Interactions, or SMI framework. So, while the regulatory and developmental category has dramatically shifted, the molecule's foundational computational architecture remains perfectly 100% preserved.
So the crucial point is that the SH-1 reality kernel preserves absolutely everything that makes the molecule unique. The tetracyclic R antagonist scaffold, the competitive presence model, the microenvironmental regulator, the geometric docking narrative, all of it stays. It's like a giant puzzle where the pieces haven't changed, just the table it's sitting on. The theoretical geometry is safely maintained within the SMI framework, while the real-world empirical clinical validation works to catch up.
The authors actually conclude their preprint with a closing declaration that is incredibly punchy and direct. First off, SH-1 is not JXL069. It is absolutely not some unvalidated speculative ingredient. Second, SH-1 is not a cosmetic active. It is completely shedding its prior surface-level promotional identity. For SH-1, that era is entirely over. And this brilliantly illustrates the core thesis of the entire paper. SH-1 is an investigational AR antagonist molecule entering a formal pathway toward clinical legitimacy. Its conceptual foundation remains entirely unchanged, but its developmental identity is permanently and strategically elevated. It really makes you look at the ingredients label on your bathroom shelf a little differently, doesn't it? Now that SH-1 has officially graduated to clinical legitimacy, it leaves us with a truly fascinating question. What other cosmetic actives out there are hiding untapped, rigorous scientific potential, just waiting for the exact right empirical framework to prove their worth? I mean, keep that in mind the next time you see a miracle ingredient being aggressively marketed. Always look for the rigor. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.